Full name is Jay, it's spelled J-A-Y, middle initial D, and last name is Meyers, M-E-Y-E-R-S. When I actually first started here was just on a month-to-month basis, was in September of '90. And then I started full-time or salaried in January of '91. And I was here all the way through April of 2003. That's kind of an interesting story in some respects. I went into the Air Force, and my date of active duty was 6 January '69. And I retired out of the Air Force in May of 1990. So I had word that an assignment was coming, and I can establish a retirement date 360 days from when I established the date. Now, one thing I had decided way long time ago when I was in service is that when I retire, I ain't putting on a coat and tie and go to work. That's out. So there's a whole lot of jobs went right off the table. So I thought construction is something I always liked to do, something I enjoyed. So I kind of started leaning towards the business, or just toward construction. In fact, I even considered at one point in time apprenticeship as well, but I thought I was too old to do that, so I didn't. So I started looking around, and Ron Sano, who used to run Panco Construction, I had his two sons in my Boy Scout troop. And he used to go on a lot of the camping trips with us, so I got to know him pretty well. So I called him up one day, and I made an appointment to go down and see him. And we talked about my retirement date, what I want to do. I said, I really want to work in construction, but I have no idea what I could do. And he thought about it a little bit. He said, well, there's two places I could see you, either in quality control or safety. I think you'd work in either one of those. So I started kind of going in that direction. And Larry Swartz, who was then president then, he and I went to the same church. I talked with him one day, and he said, we're looking for somebody who can build a safety program, start on the first brick, because we don't have any. And I said, well, I've done stuff like that in the service. I said, I probably could do that. So anyhow, that kind of got me in contact with the AGC, and it went from there. So a lot of people have asked me, what did you know about construction when you started here? I said, absolutely nothing. But there was one skill that I did have that was extremely valuable, in that my whole time in the service, you have Air Force regulations, SAC regulations, and I was used to and knew how to work my way through regulations and manuals, because the airplanes had manuals, and they did one thing and another, and 135 had specific manuals. So I was accustomed to looking through manuals and extracting the information I needed to know. And I quickly found out that Labor and Industries had all these controls, all these manuals and safety manuals, stuff like that. So, I knew how to get through those pretty easy. So I could do a lot of self-training on my own. And anyhow, it kind of talked with Merv Cedarblum and then Larry Schwartz, and came to a staff meeting one time, and then we all agreed that, okay, we'll give it a try and see where it goes. See if you like it, see if we like you, and that's that's how I got there. Okay, the biggest issue I faced when I started at the AGC, and it was when I left the AGC. And the biggest issue was trying to motivate the owners, as well as those working, as well as, let's just pick any company you want. When I first started here, everybody said they wanted to have good, safe job sites. That's what they said. But what they did was kind of two different things. And I picked up on that pretty quick and said, well, it's because you talk to a company president that said, yeah, we need to do them, and all these things we need to do. But then when I get on one of their projects, well, the superintendent didn't necessarily see that, and their foreman and things like that. So trying to get everybody going in one direction regarding safety was probably the biggest task that I had. And I don't think I even totally got it that way, because it was just, when I first started out, safety was in their minds, safety was an expense. And since it's an expense, we'll spend the minimum amount of money we need to do it. Now, I will admit, as all those years went by, the amount of time that they would spend for safety, the amount of money spent for equipment, training, all those different things, that vastly improved. But one of the things that you'll find out in that particular business is no matter how good you think you are, you still can get better. So there were a lot of companies that came a long way, and there were some companies that didn't. So it was the biggest challenge I had was trying to motivate both the owners and the staff, as well as the on-site supervision, and then to include the actual carpenters, iron workers, cement masons, all of those people, to try to get them to do what they knew they were supposed to be doing but just didn't want to do it. To improve the overall safety of the AGC contractors was, I guess, a goal. But how there's so many goals you can measure. In other words, in 2 hours I want to make 100 widgets. That's my goal, and you can measure that. But as far as measuring my success in trying to convince these companies to do things like that, you can't measure it, because you could look at one company, yeah, they had a great year last year, yeah, but look at now this year. So it's such a fluid environment as regarding safety. And that's really so. I could say I really didn't have a goal per se, and if I did, I probably wouldn't have made it. So this is just too many variables involved. Well, the economy of the 90s nationwide was really going pretty good, because right there at the end of the 90s we had that bubble break and everything fell apart. So yeah, there was a lot of work. There was a lot of work around this town, and there was a lot of out-of-town work too. And I think as far as the economy goes in the 90s, my thoughts were was pretty good. But see, I was coming out of a very controlled environment where the actual being in a service, the nationwide economy and all that sort of stuff really had very minimal effect on me. Because I was, up until I retired, I was never really in one place for a whole long time to get a feel for it. So I never, but while I was here though, I thought, as far as work was concerned, nobody was complaining about the lack of work and that sort of thing, at least that I remember. Well, Merv Cedarblum was here when I got here, and Merv had been here for a long time, and I thought he was a pretty effective manager for the most part. While he was here as the manager and I was here, I was going through a lot of the learning phase of what was going on in this world, and he helped me a lot, but he had eyes on retiring here, so his motivation might have been a little bit on the other side. But he gave me a lot of good pointers and so forth. And then Ken Dunham came in, I think it was 93, and he came forward from Montana. And Ken was a real political guy. He was pretty involved in the politics, statewide politics and that sort of thing. And that was kind of his forte. And so I got a little bit more involved in looking at and understanding the politics of Washington regarding the construction industry and things of that nature. So, and that was Ken's, that's what I remember most about him, is he was very, very politically oriented in that sort. And then Ken left. We went without one for quite some time, and several months, if I remember right. And then Wayne was selected to come in. Now, I knew Wayne from way back when he was the safety director for Acme Materials and Construction. So we already had a pretty good relationship there. Well, one of the things that we initiated and got started here was the AGC retro program. And it wasn't all that long that I was here in 1991 that I found out about retrospective rating, because the AGC down in Oregon had one in place. So I drove down there, and they had a safety director similar to what I was. And I looked at that program and I said, I don't see why we can't do something like that here. And so I started talking and asking questions, and found out that Labor and Industries had a specific office down there regarding retrospective rating. So I went down there and started talking with them, putting together. So we started putting together a program here. And then I think, and I don't know how, I'm kind of unsure about this, but then AGC of Washington found out we were doing that. And so they started moving in the same direction. So we were kind of doing these things, I was doing here and what they were doing over there were duplicated in a sense. So I was not at the meeting, but they had a meeting over there where they decided to combine the two retro plants. And so we did get that started. And that was and that's still going today, and it's still very, very effective. And a lot of companies have made a lot of their money back that they've been spending on industrial insurance. And right along with that, one of my, I'll say it's a goal, was of course to improve safety in this organization. Well, retrospective rating, if it's managed correctly, will only allow the safest companies to come into it. If you start letting everybody in, you start losing money real fast. So the retrospective rating plan was kind of a carrot that you could hang out in front of a lot of these, the owners say, well, get your plan together, do this, do this, do this. And we had checklists that we had to go, we had standards they had to meet. And the standards they had to meet were all based on safety. So we did put together a system that indirectly caused a lot of these companies to tighten down all their safety programs because they could make more money, which there's nothing wrong with that. So that was one of the most significant things, I think. And it's, like I say, it's still going today. So. Probably the attitude of the worker out there. In 1990, when I started, safety was just something that got in the way. And I heard this more from more iron workers than anybody else. Well, safety slows me down. Well, I got to do this, put on this equipment, do this, and on and on. It slows me down. Of course, I always used to tell them, I said, well, you're getting paid by the hour, so what? The guy that should complain about that would be the guy that's writing your check. But it was an attitude that I don't need it, and I don't have to wear all this equipment and do all this other stuff. So there was a very, very poor attitude towards safety. Most people agreed that they should work safely. They didn't know how in many respects, and they didn't really, it's sort of like make your kids eating vegetables that are good for you, but you can't do it. So that was the attitude, was pretty much universal when I first started. And gradually, over the years, it got better. Attitudes were changed, and they could see the results. And so there was a big, as compared to when I started here, as compared to when I left, there was a significant attitude change by the guys out in the field, as well as the owners and their staff too. Project managers, for a long, long time, project managers, safety was nothing but an expense, right? And they would spend sometimes the least amount of money they could, or none. And that changed where we knew the superintendents could buy the equipment they needed to run the job safely, to keep the guys safe. So that's probably the biggest difference. Well, when I first started, it was I won't say just a job, but it was something to follow on what I was doing. And I wasn't sure, because I came, were you ever in a service? No. Because I was a career officer, and I didn't think that I could be able to find anything that would follow on that I would feel so strongly about. And when I first started here, I had to stand back and look. And as the years went by and as the events came by, I like to retro-plan and other things, then I began to see the value of an organization like this in the construction industry. Because for number one, it's a national, what word am I looking for? It's a national association. What's that? Association. Yeah, it's a national, so that's the word I'm looking for. National association. And as time went by, and I didn't know this at the beginning, that AGC had a big influence in Washington, D.C. as well. So once a lot of these pieces started falling into place, saying, well, it's very influential here in Spokane, and it's very influential in Washington, the state of Washington. And then you take that across all the 50 states and then in Washington. So that's the part that really impressed me about the organization, is that it's been around for a long time, and the value of the construction business in this country is significant, because you want a bridge, you don't call a bunch of lawyers to get your bridge built. And so they're kind of the backbone of the country as far as roads, highways, bridges, buildings. Without them, they couldn't do it. So you got to kind of step back and look at the big picture in order to appreciate it. So, and when I first started out, I was just a minuscule dot on the big picture. So it kind of means a lot after that. We are the AGC.